more news across the globe. Let's start with Putin and Biden. As Putin says, Biden presidency is better for Russia than a Trump one. A Joe Biden presidency would be better for Russia than a Donald Trump one. Russian President Vladimir Putin told pro-Kremlin journalist Pavel Zarubin in an on-camera interview on Wednesday.
Look, Biden, he's more experienced, more predictable. He's an old-school politician. But we will work with any U.S. leader who the American people have confidence in. Look, when I met Biden in Switzerland, yes, it was 2 years ago, but it doesn't matter. Even then, people were saying he was incompetent. But I do not see anything of this sort. Yes, he kept looking at his cards, but to be honest, I kept doing the same. So there was nothing peculiar. If we talk about the time when he hit his head over an helicopter when he was going out, show me somebody who has never hit his head against something. If there's a person like that, let him cast the first stone.
Well, very interesting interview there. Well, towards the end of that interview, Putin said in a reference to Russia's war in Ukraine, he says, "I believe that the position of the current administration is extremely harmful and onerous." Quite frightening. All right, meanwhile, Stasmat has something for us in Russia and China.
Well, he added that Russia would work with any leader of the U.S. that gains the trust of the American people. But then Putin also said that in order to judge the actions of the current administration, one should look at its political position, saying he believes that the position of the current administration is extremely harmful and erroneous. Putin said this in a reference to Russia's war in Ukraine. Well, more on Russia. In what is certainly a sign of growing BRICS, the dollarization efforts, Russia, China, and India have ditched the US dollar in 95% of trade, quite a lot. The Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, Tatiana Mohagan, revealed the massive shift in currency usage in Russia's dealings.
I reached out earlier this week to the Gang of Eight to offer myself up for a personal briefing to the Gang of Eight. And in fact, we scheduled a briefing for the 4 House members of the Gang of Eight tomorrow. That's been on the books. So I am a bit surprised that Congressman Turner came out publicly today in advance of a meeting on the books for me to go sit with him alongside our intelligence and defense professionals tomorrow. That's his choice to do that. All I can tell you is that I'm focused on going to see him, sit with him, as well as the other House members of the Gang of Eight tomorrow. And I'm not in a position to say anything further from this podium at this time.
Well, the shift was defined by a massive increase in local currency usage in the trade between Russia and the 2 BRICS nations. Moreover, the ICC reported that Russia's export settlements in either the US dollar or the euro also falls drastically. Specifically, it has fallen from more than 85% in 2021 to just 34% last year. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister vows to press ahead with Rafah offensive. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted his troops will advance on the Gazan city of Rafah, defying outside pleas to reconsider. And French President Emmanuel Macron was among those warning Mr. Netanyahu off, telling him the human cost of Israel's operation in Gaza was intolerable. But Mr. Netanyahu has ordered his army to prepare for a ground assault. Some 1.4 million Palestinians are sheltering in Rafah, which has already come under bombardment. Mr. Netanyahu vowed to press on with a powerful assault, declaring that Hamas, the group which controls Gaza, must be eliminated from the southern city. He says, "We will fight until complete victory, and this includes a powerful action also in Rafah after we allow the civilian population to leave the battle zones." President Macron phoned Mr. Netanyahu on Wednesday to say Israel's operation in Gaza must cease. He expressed France's firm opposition to an Israeli offensive in Rafah, which could only lead to a humanitarian disaster of a new magnitude.
Meanwhile, U.S. alarmed by Russia's advances on space-based nuclear weapon. The United States has informed Congress and its allies in Europe about Russian advances on a new space-based nuclear weapon designed to threaten Americans' extensive satellite network. According to current and former officials, well, that's what it said about this particular issue. He said such a satellite-killing weapon, if deployed, could destroy civilian communications, surveillance from space and military command and control operations by the United States and its allies. At the moment, the United States does not have the ability to control it.
Well, Iran boasts of capabilities to attack Israel base after a nuclear official indicates the ability to create bombs. Iran is drawing closer to possible conflict as it simulates attacks on an Israeli base and signals that it could create a nuclear weapon if officials ordered it. Iranian braggadocio about their nuclear program is reaching new and unprecedented levels. Behnam Ben Taliblu, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, told Fox News Digital. Iran's former atomic energy chief is essentially hinting that Tehran has all the pieces of a nuclear weapon in place but disassembled. Taliblu said this. Now, the commentary should be raising red flags for anyone who thought the version of fissile materials was the only thing they needed to be prevented and accounted for with international monitoring, he also said.
Number one is Iraq and Syria, where for the past 2.5 months there have been over 100 different rocket, mortar, drone, and even missile attacks by Iran-backed proxies in Iraq against the U.S. force presence there. And there's only been a handful of very limited pinprick retaliatory strikes by the U.S. that actually do more to embolden Iran and its proxies than to reestablish deterrence. The second theater where the Houthis have first been trying to strike Israel directly with drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles, and when they've been unsuccessful, they've now been trying to fire these projectiles at international shipping. And there, despite even the presence of the U.S. new maritime security construct there, they have been more successful, and they are increasing insurance premiums and forcing ships to be rerouted. If you look at the response ratio, even going into October 7, it was quite poor, especially the response ratio in Iraq, where the U.S. has had a penchant for absorbing these strikes rather than responding in places like Syria, which traditionally has been treated like a free fire zone. Look, there's a strategy that the administration needs to take here, and that is to, during times of peace, meaning when they are not being fired on, to actually target the depots and the facilities that house these weapons, and then during times of war, or when they're responding to fire, to actually go against A, the point of origin where the weapon is coming from, B, the headquarters of the groups that actually have given the go order for these strikes, and C, to find any locations where the fighters may be fleeing to or may be co-located with other terror proxy groups and fire on them as well.
Well, the quiet part out loud here is that Tehran does not fear the Biden administration's response to these claims, stressed Taliblu, by tipping their hand about mastered but dispersed nuclear capabilities. Iranian official may be gunning for a nuclear sweet spot, benefiting from the deterrent dividends of a nuclear weapon without the political and military cost of weaponization, says Taliblu. Well, with that, we'll move into the sports news and have Gabellison tell us what's going on there.